NTA International News.
Infrastructure to receive boost to stimulate private sector participation in economic development. Nigerian engineers move to play key roles to attain set development agenda for 2030. Political Party Summit in London identifies corruption as bane of infrastructural development in Nigeria. Now here's the news on NTA International. I am Ifeanyi Okafor. And we begin with a report on the AU as the African Union Economic, Social and Cultural Council has stepped up its advocacy for a united and prosperous Africa. Tagged Agenda 2063, the group hopes to engender synergy between the regional economic communities in tracking sustainable development in Africa. Gufan Shaji reports.
50 years after the formation of the Organization of African Unity, Pan-Africanism and the struggle for renaissance continues with the continent, buoyed by the commitment being demonstrated by leaders and the people on the continent. The African Union is providing institutional leadership in the quest to building a greater Africa. It falls under the Agenda 2063, a 50-year plan of action for an Africa which has realized its full potentials.
Dedicate ourselves to the enduring Pan-African vision of an integrated and prosperous and peaceful Africa, derived by its own citizens and presenting a dynamic force in the international arena.
The African Union Economic, Social and Cultural Council is optimistic that an aggressive implementation of 2063 will begin in the second quarter of 2016. In Abuja, Gufan Shaji, NTA News.
Turning to the sciences, leveraging science, technology and innovation in the development of Africa and the role Africa can play on the global scientific stage give credence to the next Einstein Forum, where Senegal, Africa's political decision-maker, gathered to share expertise and experience. Science correspondent Kirian Umayo reports that the scientific event represents collective reasoning towards technological advancement.
The idea of the conference was conceived in 2013, and the target are young scientists from across the African continent privileged to meet with world's leading thinkers. Minister of Science and Technology, Dr. Ogbonnaya Onu, who represented President Muhammadu Buhari at the event, said the conference will build strong scientific collaboration in Africa.
The time has come for Africa to reaffirm our commitment to the use of science and technology as an important instrument to stimulate human development and progress by minimizing human suffering, especially in view of recent increases in the level of poverty, conflict and strife, social restlessness. We do not have any other option left for us but to seriously embrace and utilize science, engineering, technology and innovation.
Presidents Macky Sall of Senegal and Paul Kagame of Rwanda noted that it's a new dawn for Africa driven by science.
But you should also be creating the science and technology tools provided to relate them to our purpose.
Chairperson of the forum, Thierry Zemahun, said his mission is to enable Africa's brightest science students to connect with Africa's political policy makers. The panelists at the first session of the forum are unanimous in their understanding that for Africa to grow in this millennium, its leaders must invest in science and put it at the center of solving global challenges. That way, they will build a continent that will reconnect science to humanity. From International Conference Center, Dakar, Senegal, Kirian Umayo, NTA News.
Now, in pursuit of SDGs, Nigeria's Society of Engineers says it is poised to play the leadership role towards positioning Nigeria on the platform for attaining the Sustainable Development Goals before the year 2030. President of the group, Otis Anyeji, stated this while addressing newsmen ahead of a two-day workshop structured for the actualization of the set goals. Adebola Brookslyn Sunday has details.
Man's activities on the planet Earth have led to what experts described as destructive to the human race. The attempt to return humanity to sanity and unity of purpose led to a set of goals termed the Millennium Development Goals (MDGs) in the year 2000, now Sustainable Development Goals (SDGs) by the United Nations.
Maintaining the infrastructure and the industry ought to be applied by
experts at the forum agreed that the social and technical infrastructure required for development is practically obtainable through engineering means, which the body said will ensure Nigeria actualizes.
All of the SDGs rely on engineering foundations. The Nigerian engineer must therefore lead the narratives and thrust for national development, especially in these days of change. In this light, NSC has instituted a workshop. The workshop, which has several other sub-themes, presents the platform for stakeholders to guide government on the strategies to deploy to attain these agreed and laudable goals.
The workshop with the theme Implementation of SDGs in Nigeria, Engineering Perspective is slated for next week. Adebola Brookslyn Sunday, NTA News.
Turning to economic matters now, the Nigerian government says it's ready to boost the needed infrastructure for the private sector to grow. The Minister of Budget and National Planning, Udoma, said this at a meeting with a delegation of the management of the Infrastructure Bank, led by its Chief Executive Officer, Adekunle Oyinloye, in Abuja. Joy Uzo reports.
Justifying the decision of the government to allocate more money for infrastructure in the 2016 budget, the minister said infrastructure is very necessary to grow the economy of a nation. He explained further that more than 60% of the investment needed for infrastructure development in the country is to be realized from the private sector, adding that the government will prepare projects that are bankable so that the private sector can invest in them. Accordingly, the minister reiterated the desire of the federal government to build stronger relationship with the Infrastructure Bank and create an environment for the private sector to thrive by intensifying its collaboration with the bank, pointing out that the collaboration with TIB was very important with government's effort at diversifying the nation's economy from crude oil.
In order to achieve the pace of development that we need, the private sector must contribute even more than 60%, much more, significantly more. So we will create the environment to stimulate private sector investment. And that is why our collaboration with the Infrastructure Bank is so important to us. Because it is through that collaboration that we can prepare projects so that they are bankable.
Earlier, the CEO of the Infrastructure Bank, Mr. Adekunle Oyinloye, told the minister that TIB was a partner with the former National Planning Commission, NPC, in the last 2 years and actively participated in the development of the National Integrated Infrastructure Master Plan, NIMP, and has also been a key stakeholder in the implementation process and supporting infrastructure-related initiatives in the country.
So under that cooperation agreement, we have to identify priority projects, which is very important. Because we had to say which one: power, road, rail, airports, water, hospital, schools, ICT. Which one will come first? Then how do we categorize them? And we could categorize them as critical, viable, economically, critical but not viable, some purely social, and we begin to look at what mix of funding we can apply on the basis of that priority.
The CEO recommended the reconstitution of the collaborative technical team on the National Integrated Infrastructure Master Plan, NIP, and operationalization of the subsisting MOU, as well as providing funding and technical support for delivery of NIP priorities. In Abuja, Joy Uzo, NTA News.
Developing sustainable infrastructure in Nigeria was the focus of a summit organized by the United Kingdom chapter of the All Progressives Congress, APC, in London. National Chairman of the APC, Chief John Odige-Oyegun, and Britain's government policy advisor on extractive industries, Martin Brown, identified corruption and lack of good governance as the bane of infrastructural deficit in the country. Bilkisu Abdurazak Odoye reports.
The summit, with sub-themes: financial corruption and infrastructural development in Nigeria, infrastructural development in Nigeria and diaspora participation, as well as developing sustainable infrastructure in Nigeria, APC Manifesto Perspectives, the APC UK chapter chairman, Dr. Philip Idao, says is aimed at identifying challenges in Nigeria's road to development and proffering solutions. Speakers are of the view that though Nigeria is possessed of huge and abundant human and national resources, poor infrastructure and endemic corruption has deprived the country and citizens of the success they desire. They offered solutions to these challenges.
And his solution, as we know, is to break it down, get rid of this monolithic company, which is opaque, and to form 30 new, more transparent companies with much more accountability. So that's a great measure, a great thing to happen.
But what stops the Nigerian international forming themselves into corporate entities and taking position within the Nigerian economy?
National chairman of the APC, Chief John Odige Oyegun, is also of the view that most of the hardship being currently experienced due to the drop in oil prices will be overcome as the federal government is working assiduously to put things right.
These factories must start working. We must have electricity. We're having power plants that were not connected to the gas feedstock. So it's complex, it is difficult, but believe me, we are all out on this issue to solve the problem.
A robust interactive session featured with most of the diasporans displaying their concern over happenings back home and pledging their support to assist the country with their expertise when needed. In London, Bilkisu Abdurazak Uduoye, NTA News.
Back home, Nigerian women have been urged to key into the numerous untapped resources embedded in the agricultural sector to enhance self-sufficiency and empowerment. This came to the fore at an event put together by Professional Women's Day in Abuja. Olajide Bello has more.
The campaign for revamping and restoring agriculture in Nigeria to its pride of place as the country's mainstay of the economic climax discussions at the forum.
The president is looking forward to our group to make a difference in Nigeria, both in terms of increasing our GDP. You don't have to go to the farms to be involved in agriculture. And we know the massive income that can accrue to women.
And it's not just to farm, you can even go into the secondary value on the product.
Contributing about 70% to employment and about 60% to the country's gross domestic product, according to National Bureau of Statistics and the Central Bank of Nigeria, young women were advised to tap into the immense opportunities accrued in the sector.
Agric takes in 70% of job creation.
If we're not going to have food scarcity, then we need to have women engaged more methodically in agriculture.
I mean, it's not just a man's thing. We need to begin to embrace the opportunities, the possibilities.
To save the estimated $30 billion expended on importation of foreign foods and agro-allied products annually, experts advise the federal government to invest more in the areas of agricultural development and food processing. In Abuja, Olajide Bello, NTA News.
You're watching the news on NTA International, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. We'll take a break now and return with a weekend review segment and other stories trending on the global scene.
Nigerians, our fearless officers and men of the Nigerian military are winning the war against Boko Haram. Today, all occupied territories have been recovered and Boko Haram has been degraded. Our affected brothers and sisters are getting their lives back. However, they are now after you and me. In our mosques, churches, schools, motor parks, markets, entertainment centers, and public gatherings. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me. Nigeria, unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Great to have you back. Now, President Muhammadu Buhari received special envoy of President Muhammad Abdulaziz of Sahrawi Republic, pledges support to actualize independence. These and other happenings shaped the outgoing week, as we hear from Obiageli Ugoke in our Weekend Review segment.
Hello there, you're welcome to the Week in Review. I am Obiageli Ugoke. This week at the Federal Executive Council meeting, President Muhammadu Buhari directed 2 children of the late James Ocholi be automatically employed by federal government, while scholarship be given to the other 2 in school. Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Bawachiu David Lawan, announced this at the valedictory section of the Council. The Federal Executive Council as well approved the setting up of a presidential initiative on continuous audits aimed at boosting controls over public finances in the finance sectors. The Minister of Finance, Kemi Adeosun, announced this at the end of the Council meeting.
Federal Executive Council agreed that the control framework over finance and the spending of government money needed to be strengthened, especially in anticipation of the approval of the budget.
Track up. South Africa President Jacob Zuma was in Nigeria this week to strengthen bilateral ties between Nigeria and South Africa. Nigeria and the Republic of South Africa resolved to work more closely together towards deepening the strategic bilateral engagement between the 2 countries. Nearly 30 dormant agreements already signed over the years are to be revitalized for enhanced socio-economic benefits.
We are determined to make them much more relevant by meeting at the highest level at least once a year and going over what our council, respective council of ministers have been able to achieve.
We have also directed our ministers to identify joint projects in the key high-impact strategic development areas.
The South Africa president as well addressed a joint session of the National Assembly. He expressed optimism that the parliament of both countries will grow its operations in order to make laws that will promote the interest and well-being of the people. Meanwhile, as part of efforts to facilitate the recovery of Nigeria's loot, the bill for an act to make provision for mutual assistance in criminal matters between Nigeria and foreign states passed second reading at the Senate plenary this week. And the House of Representatives advised the Minister of State for Petroleum and Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, to suspend his plan of unbundling the NNPC. We reported that Nigeria may soon be in possession of $321 looted fund as the federal government and Swiss government signed an agreement to that effect.
The World Bank will be part of the monitoring process to ensure that the money is used for the benefit of the Nigerian people.
If we find a good solution with a good treaty between Nigeria and Switzerland on these conditions, I mean the monitoring mechanisms and the projects that have to be supported, then it can be very swift because the decision as a principle of restituting the $321 million is already taken.
On transportation, we informed you that the Minister of Transportation has taken delivery of 4 new modern high-speed rail coaches at the Apapa ports in Lagos as part of efforts to improve rail transportation across the nation.
Service a design speed of about 150 kilometers per hour. So with that, I can assure you that passengers will get to their destination as fast as it can be.
Also reported that the combined air and land operation of the Nigerian Air Force have flushed out remnants of Boko Haram terrorists at their Izar camp in Borno State. We informed you that Nigeria joined the rest of the world this week to commemorate the International Women's Day. Government and non-governmental organizations reiterated commitments to carry women and girls along in the present administration's change mantra. They as well advocated gender equality at all levels of the sectors in Nigeria.
This is in direct response to experimental evidence that demonstrates that women can influence peace, reconciliation, and other components of national development if they are empowered.
We want them to be a contributor to the home. What do I mean by that? We're trying to see also how we can empower them. You can see what we did in there. We had 3 segments of empowerment.
That's it on the segment. The news continues.
Thank you, Obiageli. Now to reports from other parts of the world with Basi Itaipang as our guide.
The Nations Security Council has passed its first-ever resolution to tackle an escalating problem of sexual abuse by peacekeepers assigned to protect civilians in countries where there are conflicts. The UN has been under pressure for months over allegation of child rape and other abuses by its troops. Report says those based in Central African Republic and Democratic Republic of Congo are the most accused. The UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon says the resolution is a significant step in a collective effort to combat the damage caused to victims of sexual exploitation and abuse. In another development, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says violence in Syria has reduced by 80 to 90% since the UN ceasefire came into effect. John Kerry added that peace talks should go on despite some violations. The U.S. Secretary of State, who spoke after a meeting with his Saudi counterpart Saturday, observed that Russian and U.S. monitors will meet to try to further stem fighting in Syria. Report hazarded that since the ceasefire started on February 27, the government and its opponents have traded tit-for-tat accusations of breaches.
Now talking sports. As Nigeria intensifies preparations for next week's Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers against Egypt, Coach Samson Siasia has asked 6 players from the Super Eagles camp in Abuja. Coach Siasia decalmed the players as Battle for Eagles shirt ahead of the Africa Cup of Nations versus Egypt gets together. Prince Agre, Chris Madaki and Bright Onyedikachi topped the list of the casualties for not meeting up to the required standard. More players will be shown the exit door as the country hopes to raise a formidable team against the Pharaohs in the make-or-break qualifier for Gabon 2017. Now, British number 2 Heather Watson lost the last 6 games as her 6-match winning run came to an end against Monica Nicolescu in the Indian Wells. It's time to check on the weather prospect for Sunday in Nigeria and major cities across the world. And that concludes the news on NTA International. I am Ifeanyi Okafor. Many thanks for watching.